We offer you a warm welcome to this workshop. It will last for about 1 hour. Please turn up your speaker and kindly keep your microphones muted. Now sit back and enjoy.
The origins of Alcoholics Anonymous can be traced to the Oxford Group, a religious movement popular in the United States and Europe in the early 20th century. One of its members was a guy named W.D.B. who happened to be an old schoolmate of Bill W., who by his own admission drank himself into chronic alcoholism. Bill, at a later date, became a founder member of Alcoholics Anonymous. During this period, W.D.B. sought out Bill W. at his home in Brooklyn, New York, to carry the message of hope. Bill had never seen W.D.B. sober like this and was amazed. W.D.B. unloaded what had happened through his Oxford Group experiences. Bill was at first unconvinced by W.D.B.'s story of transformation, and the claims of the Oxford Group. But in December 1934, after again landing in Towns Hospital for treatment, Bill underwent a powerful spiritual experience unlike any he had ever known. His depression and despair were lifted, and he felt free and at peace. Bill stopped drinking, and worked the rest of his life to bring that freedom and peace to other alcoholics. The roots of Alcoholics Anonymous were planted.
Following Bill W.'s spiritual awakening at Towns Hospital, late 1934, he and wife Lois joined the Oxford Group, a non-denominational movement whose tenets are based on the four absolutes of honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love. They begin to attend meetings at Calvary House, behind Manhattan's Calvary Episcopal Church there. Bill is inspired by the charismatic rector Reverend Dr. Samuel Shoemaker, who emphasizes one-on-one sharing and guidance. Bill joins the Smiths at the weekly Oxford Group meetings held in the home of T. Henry Williams and his wife Clarice, both particularly sympathetic to the plight of alcoholics. At the suggestion of Dr. Bob's wife Anne, Bill moves to their home at 855 Ardmore Avenue.
A short-term job opportunity takes Bill to Akron, Ohio. In the lobby of his hotel, he finds himself fighting the urge to join the conviviality in the bar. He consults a church directory posted on the wall with the aim of finding someone who might lead him to an alcoholic with whom he could talk. A phone call to Episcopal minister Reverend Walter Tunks results in a referral to Henrietta Seiberling, a committed Oxford Group adherent who has tried for 2 years to bring a fellow group member, a prominent Akron surgeon, to sobriety.
Here I was on a Saturday afternoon, alone in the Mayflower Hotel at Akron, Ohio. I walked down to the lobby, strode back and forth. At one end there was a plaque with the names of the various churches and preachers. At the other end of my beat there was a bar room. The bar room was filling up, and so were the people in it. And that buzz, so characteristic of bars, had a pleasant sound to me. Soon I found myself saying, well, perhaps I could go in there and have a drink of ginger ale and possibly scrape an acquaintance to pass away this lonely afternoon. And then I caught myself and thought, well, I have been restored to sanity. I can see I'm in danger. I walked over to the church directory again, thinking, well, now perhaps I had better find an alcoholic that I might talk to. Because at last, I see that I need such a person as much as he could possibly need me.
As the result of his phone call to the Reverend Walter Tunks, Bill was put in touch with Henrietta Seiberling, daughter-in-law of the founder of the Goodyear Rubber Company. Henrietta invites Bill to the Seiberling estate, where she lives in the gatehouse. She tells him of the struggle of Dr. Robert Smith, and the meeting of the two men takes place the next day, Mother's Day, May 12, 1935. In the privacy of the library, Bill spills out his story, inspiring Dr. Bob to share his own. As the meeting ends hours later, Dr. Bob realizes how much spiritual support can come as the result of one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic. All this came about because Bill made a decision rather than give in to circumstances. And because of that decision, those of us in this room today are alive and probably well. My cup runneth over.
Dr. Bob lapses into drinking again but quickly recovers. The day widely known as the date of Dr. Bob's last drink, the 10th of June 1935, is celebrated as the founding date of Alcoholics Anonymous. Dr. Bob and Bill spend hours working out the best approach to alcoholics, a group known to be averse to taking directions. Realizing that thinking of sobriety for a day at a time makes it seem more achievable than facing a lifetime of struggle, they hit on the 24-hour concept.
Eager to carry the message, Bill and Dr. Bob search for another person to help. After a slow start, their call to Akron City Hospital yields a prospect, Bill D., a lawyer. During the visits of Bill and Dr. Bob, Bill D. takes their message to heart and promises never to drink again, a vow he keeps for life. Now remembered as the man on the bed, as depicted in this painting by an AA member, Bill D. becomes the third member of what will eventually be called Alcoholics Anonymous. Charles B. Towns, owner of Towns Hospital, suggests that Bill move his work to the hospital, where he could treat alcoholics, conduct his meetings, and share in the establishment's profits. At the Clinton Street meeting that evening, Bill tells his group of the offer, but the members object, insisting that spreading the message for money would violate its integrity. It could be suggested that this insistence from those in his home that evening constituted perhaps the very first group conscience meeting. The picture on the left shows Bill's admission slip to Towns Hospital. John D. Rockefeller Jr. hosts a dinner at the exclusive Union Club to publicize Alcoholics Anonymous. Because Rockefeller believes that AA should be self-supporting, and this is understood by the guests, no money is solicited or raised. Nevertheless, Rockefeller sees to it that the event receives favorable and widespread publicity. Within a month, small donations trickle in from members, slightly easing the financial difficulty faced by Alcoholics Anonymous during this early period.
In March 1940, Works Publishing moves from Newark to a small office at 30 Vesey Street in Lower Manhattan. Though something of a financial gamble, the move means that for the first time the fellowship has a headquarters of its own.
Friends in Westchester County, a half-hour north of New York City, help Bill and Lois work out a financial plan that enables them finally to acquire a house in Bedford Hills. On April 11, 1941, the couple spends their first night there. The comfortable shingled, hip-roofed house, which they will name Stepping Stones, affords them a measure of privacy for the first time since Alcoholics Anonymous was founded. Publication of Alcoholics Anonymous by Jack Alexander in the Saturday Evening Post issue of March 1, 1941, marked a milestone in the history of this fellowship. Although one national article had been published previously, the Post report on the handful of men and women who had achieved sobriety through AA was largely responsible for the surge of interest that established the society on a national and international basis. The Post story is a reminder of AA's development in a relatively short span of years. In 1941, approximately 2,000 men and women were living the AA program successfully. Today, the number exceeds 2 million, and over 61,000 groups meet regularly throughout the United States and Canada and in more than 180 countries. In 1941, Jack Alexander reported upon the sense of humility and service that distinguished the AA program and those who then practiced it. Alcoholics Anonymous has had a tremendous growth since that time. But the same awareness of our need to continue to serve fellow alcoholics in a spirit of helpfulness and humility remains the cornerstone of our society. It is in that spirit that this historic article is reprinted for all those members, old and new, who share a common interest in the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous. A copy of this article can be obtained through our website, www.jft333.org.
Dr. Sylvester Minogue, pictured right, who was at the time the medical superintendent of a large hospital in Sydney, Australia, became impressed after reading an article on Alcoholics Anonymous in the American Journal of Psychiatry. As a result, he decided to write a letter to the AJP with a request that his letter be forwarded to the Alcoholic Foundation. His request for information led to his receiving a copy of the Big Book from Secretary W.D.B of the New York office. This action set the stage for the start-up of AA groups in Australia.
In June of 1945, more than 2,500 of the Fellowship's members and friends from 36 states and 2 Canadian provinces gather in Cleveland to honor Bill W. and Dr. Bob and to celebrate 10 years of Alcoholics Anonymous. Sponsored by the city's 44 groups, the 2-day event includes open house meetings, parties, a tea, an assembly at Severance Hall, Wright, and a closing dinner at the Carter Hotel. According to a Grapevine reporter, the speeches of Bill and Dr. Bob trace the development of AA with gratitude, humility, and simplicity.
After World War II ends, Alcoholics Anonymous groups begin to spring up in other lands, with word of the fledgling organization spreading south of the border, across the Atlantic, and to the Pacific Rim. The next decade also witnesses the Fellowship's first international convention and the creation of the General Service Conference.
Though the first official AA group in England won't be formed until 1948, the ball gets rolling when a visiting American woman, Grace O., writes to 5 Londoners who are in touch with the Alcoholic Foundation and schedules a meeting at the Dorchester Hotel for March 31, 1947. The 8 attendees include 2 AA members from North America, an AA from Hollywood, California, whose acquaintance she had made on the voyage across the Atlantic, and Canadian Bob, whom Grace had met in a London restaurant and who will figure large in AA's growth. Meetings will continue in restaurants and residences, among them the home of Canadian Bob. Legal status. The General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous Great Britain is a limited company regulated by its Memorandum and Articles of Association laid down in the Companies Act. Functions, occupations and activities. Alcoholics Anonymous Great Britain works to enable its members to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. Internal structures and genealogy. The governance of Alcoholics Anonymous, Great Britain, Limited is based on the guidance of the 12 Traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous, 12 Concepts for Service, and the Charter of the General Service Conference. Consultation between the main charity, the General Service Board, and its supporters, groups, intergroups, and regions of Alcoholics Anonymous in Great Britain, takes place on a regular basis through service forums and workshops and the annual General Service Conference comprising of elected delegates from each of the regions in Alcoholics Anonymous, Great Britain, and the trustees of the board.
In 1948, Sir Philip D., a Scottish gentleman farmer who has long struggled with alcoholism, travels to the U.S. at the invitation of the Oxford Group. There he meets AA member George R., who acquaints him with the Fellowship's principles. Sir Philip returns home determined to stop drinking and to carry the AA message. He succeeds, and Scotland's first known groups are founded in May 1949 in Edinburgh and in Glasgow, where meetings are held in the St. Enoch Hotel, Wright. In July 1950, Alcoholics Anonymous' 15th anniversary is marked with an international convention in Cleveland, Ohio, with some 3,000 people in attendance. One of the most significant events is the adoption of the 12 Traditions. The convention, held at the Cleveland Public Auditorium, pictured right, also features the last public message to the Fellowship by Dr. Bob, who stresses, in his brief remarks, kindness and keeping it simple.
Dr. Bob dies of cancer on November 16, 1950. During the Akron physician's 15 years of sobriety, the fellowship he started with Bill W. had transformed the lives of close to 100,000 men and women and their loved ones. Born in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, on August 8, 1879, an only child. As a heavy drinking student he was renowned for his open throat, being able to drink a bottle of beer without moving any muscles in his throat. Missed a final exam due to the shakes, he had to repeat 2 terms. He specialized in rectal surgery at St. Thomas's Hospital, Akron, Ohio. He suffered terribly from alcoholism until he was 56. Dr. Bob's last drink was on June 10, 1935, the official birthday of Alcoholics Anonymous. AA's birthday signifies nothing more than two sober drunks helping each other. This simple formula has been working ever since, right across the world. Bill W. had the desire to drink removed from him instantly. Dr. Bob struggled with urges to drink for 2 years but never gave in to them. This also reflects the differences experienced in recovery from alcoholism in the AA fellowship today. His home pictured right is a wonderful place to visit, as I did myself in July of 2000.
12 Steps and 12 Traditions is first published in 1953. Bill W. becomes increasingly devoted to writing projects, one of which emerges as 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, the book that sets forth his deepest understanding of AA's basic principles.
Second edition of Big Book published in 1955. The second edition of Alcoholics Anonymous reflects the membership's growing diversity. The chapters on AA principles remain the same, and 8 of the stories of early members' efforts to achieve sobriety are retained in a section called Pioneers of AA. In addition, 24 new stories appear in 2 separate sections: They Stopped in Time, and They Lost Nearly All. The 12 traditions are added as well. Bill writes to Carl Jung. In a 1961 letter to Swiss-German psychoanalyst Dr. Carl Jung, Bill expresses his gratitude for Jung's long-ago message to Roland Hazard, who was treated by Jung and who would later lead friend Ebby Thatcher, to the Oxford group. Bill wrote, "You frankly told Roland of the hopelessness of further medical or psychiatric treatment, and also of the possibility of a spiritual awakening or religious experience. In short, a genuine conversion." Bill described these statements as beyond doubt the first foundation stone upon which Alcoholics Anonymous has been built. Jung responds with a gracious letter, confirming that the most appropriate antidote to alcoholism is spirituality, which is emphasized in the 12 steps. Here follows the content of the letter he wrote to Bill.
Dear Mr. Wilson, your letter has been very welcome indeed. I had no news from Roland H. anymore and often wondered what has been his fate. Our conversation, which he had adequately reported to you, had an aspect of which he did not know. The reason that I could not tell him everything was that those days I had to be exceedingly careful of what I said. I had found out that I was misunderstood in every possible way. Thus I was very careful when I talked to Roland H., but what I really thought about was the result of many experiences with men of his kind. His craving for alcohol was the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness, expressed in medieval language, the union with God. How could one formulate such an insight in a language that is not misunderstood in our days? The only right and legitimate way to such an experience is that it happens to you in reality, and it can only happen to you when you walk on a path which leads you to a higher understanding. You might be led to that goal by an act of grace, or through a personal and honest contact with friends, or through a higher education of the mind beyond the confines of mere rationalism. I see from your letter that Roland H. has chosen the second way, which was, under the circumstances, obviously the best one. I am strongly convinced that the evil principle prevailing in this world leads the unrecognized spiritual need into perdition, if it is not counteracted either by a real religious insight or by the protective wall of human community. An ordinary man, not protected by an action from above and isolated in society, cannot resist the power of evil, which is called very aptly the devil. But the use of such words arouse so many mistakes that one can only keep aloof from them as much as possible. These are the reasons why I could not give a full and sufficient explanation to Roland H., but I am risking it with you because I conclude from your very decent and honest letter that you have acquired a point of view above the misleading platitudes one usually hears about alcoholism. You see, alcohol in Latin is spiritus, and you use the same word for the highest religious experience as well as for the most depraving poison. The helpful formula therefore is spiritus contra spiritum. Thanking you again for your kind letter. I remain yours sincerely, C.G. Jung.
UK Island Groups. Guernsey gets on board in 1961 when Prue, a loner, arranges for meetings to be held in the study of the headmaster of St. Joseph's Roman Catholic School in St. Peter Port. When the group moves to a room above a cafe, membership grows from 6 to a dozen. But not until the group finds a permanent home at Princess Elizabeth Hospital in 1981 will it undergo significant growth. A group starts meeting in the nearby island of Jersey in 1962, and small inter-island conventions are held for 4 or 5 years, in Guernsey in autumn, in Jersey in spring. The first AA group on the Isle of Man, to the north in the Irish Sea, will be formed in 1966.
1962. 12 Concepts for World Service published. In 1962, the General Service Conference accepts Bill's long-awaited manuscript for 12 Concepts for World Service. In the introduction, Bill writes that his aim is to record the why of our service structure in such a fashion that the highly valuable experience of the past, and the lessons we have drawn from that experience, can never be forgotten or lost.
In July 1965, more than 10,000 members from around the world meet in Toronto for the 30th Anniversary International Convention. Some 250 members of AA, Al-Anon, and Alateen, plus 24 internationally known non-alcoholic authorities on alcoholism, are featured speakers at 69 jam-packed sessions. As the convention ends, attendees clasp hands and recite the newly developed Declaration of Responsibility, led by Bill and Lois.
1965 to 1984, 1 million members and growing. Alcoholics Anonymous begins its 4th decade on firm footing, garnering respect far and wide. Over the next 20 years, cooperation and sponsorship among AA countries will grow, the fellowship's international conventions will expand in size and spirit, and the language of the heart will be spoken in at least 40 different tongues. In the Arabian Gulf, AA began to show and slowly grow. The first meetings openly available to those who desired to stop drinking began in Bahrain.
For the first time, representatives from countries where AAs have established a GSO or a literature distribution center convene to share information on service structures, group services, publishing, and finance. The date is October 8 to 11, 1969, and the place is New York City. Attendees include Bill W., Chairman Dr. John L. Norris, GSO New York Manager Bob H., and delegates from Australia, Belgium, Canada, Colombia, Costa Rica, Finland, France, Germany, Guatemala, Holland, Mexico, New Zealand, Norway, South Africa, United Kingdom, and the United States. These World Service meetings, started in 1969, have been held biennially since 1972. Its locations alternate between New York and overseas. It has met in London, England, Helsinki, Finland, San Juan del Rio, Mexico, Guatemala City, Guatemala, Munich, Germany, and Cartagena, Colombia. At the age of 75, Bill W. dies on January 24, 1971 at the Miami Heart Institute in Miami Beach, Florida. On February 14, groups around the world hold memorial meetings honoring Bill's work as co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, author of the Big Book and other publications, and architect and articulator of the fellowship's principles.
The first edition of Share magazine was published in 1972, and remains one of the primary publications of Alcoholics Anonymous Great Britain. This series contains print, digital, and audio editions of the magazine as well as Share-branded calendars and diaries. Includes editorial material related to the publication and circulation of the magazine. Alcoholics Anonymous in Scotland has its own magazine, namely Roundabout.
The startup of AA in Italy is said to be 1972, when a small group of Americans meeting in Rome is joined by locals Giovanni and Ermanno. Assisted by some of the Americans, the two men soon join with Carol C. to form the first known Italian-speaking AA group. 2 years later, a group will be founded in Florence, and Milan will follow suit in 1976. In 1978, representatives of several groups meet to start negotiations with GSO New York for the sponsorship of the publication of Il Grande Libro, the Big Book, which is already being translated into Italian. They succeed, and Alcolisti Anonimi is published in 1980.
A milestone for the AA Grapevine. Back in June 1944, an 8-page bulletin intended to bring AA news to members, including soldiers overseas, expands to become the Fellowship's official magazine. It comes to be called AA's Meeting in Print. Copies of the periodical's first edition had numbered 1,200 and had gone out to 165 subscribers and other members of AA then. The circulation of the Fellowship's Meeting in Print had grown tremendously. The picture shows the March 1978 edition when circulation has exceeded 100,000 copies every month. I tried to research current circulation figures but I was unable to obtain accurate information. Sorry. The AA Grapevine is entirely self-supporting through the sale of the magazine and related items. It receives none of the group contributions sent to the General Service Office.
A biography of AA co-founder Dr. Bob, entitled Dr. Bob and the Good Old-Timers, is published in time for the International Convention in New Orleans in 1980. The 382-page book combines Dr. Bob's life story with recollections of AA's exhilarating and tumultuous early days in Akron and the Midwest.
The Fellowship's 50th Anniversary International Convention in Montreal in 1985 draws more than 45,000 members of AA, Al-Anon, and family and friends, more than twice the attendance of the record-setting 1980 convention in New Orleans. Delegates from 54 nations give the gathering a truly international feel, and meetings in the Olympic Park Stadium are simultaneously translated into French, Spanish, and German. One of the honored guests is Ruth Hock Crecelius, a non-alcoholic, who is presented with the 5 millionth copy of the Big Book, the original manuscript of which she had typed almost half a century earlier when she was Bill W.'s secretary at their small office in Newark, New Jersey.
Father Paddy Martin, a missionary priest from Ireland, arrived in Cebu in the early 1980s. As an alcoholic, he suddenly found himself in a place where there was no AA meetings. On the rare occasion when he was able to go to Manila, the largest city in the Philippines, he attended AA meetings. One morning in 1984 he came to. On the floor of his room in Cebu. He was lying in a pool of his own urine with an empty whiskey bottle on the floor nearby. It was then that he uttered the words that have saved many lives since, "I have to start a meeting here." Thus, the first meeting of AA in Cebu, the second largest city in the Philippines, took place on December 10, 1984. Father Paddy stayed sober until his death in 2010. AA has spread from Cebu to various locations in the central and southern parts of the Philippines. In response to the lockdowns caused by the COVID pandemic, online AA Zoom meetings were started in Cebu and are popular to this day.
The Akron house where Dr. Bob and his wife lived and raised their children, 855 Ardmore Avenue, is open to visitors in 1985. Much of the furniture is original, as is the still working refrigerator, which Dr. Bob and Ann bought in 1934, and many of Dr. Bob and Ann's books line the shelves. The author of this presentation was lucky enough to visit this house during a visit to Akron in the year 2000. He says it is very well worth the visit. Growth of electronic meetings. As the fellowship expands rapidly around the world, some AA members turn to their personal computers to give and receive the message of recovery. Since the mid-1980s, electronic communication has been an updated and expanded version of the telephone therapy of AA's earlier days. Primitive electronic bulletin boards set up on home computers are linked through national and international networks, enabling local users to join instant meetings with AAs all over the world. A number of international networks are listed with GSO New York.
AA India holds its first General Service Office conference in Bombay, now Mumbai, in May 1987. By the year 2000, more than 20 conferences and PI public information meetings will have been held in different parts of India, and the country's GSO will have published the Big Book in 8 languages: English, Hindi, Marathi, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Punjabi, and Bengali. In the Delhi meeting room shown to the right hang banners printed with the 12 traditions, one in Hindi, the other in English.
In 1989, I returned to Kuwait. I met up with Alona Joe, from India. Because there were no meetings in Kuwait at the time, we started a meeting. Kuwait, being a strict Islamic state at that time, made it quite difficult to do this. But we persevered and kept trying. We had no meeting room at first. We had the shade of a palm tree under which we would meet every Friday afternoon for about 30 minutes. No preamble or serenity prayer. Just a couple of drunks in recovery. We were joined by 2 other expats. Our group had its beginning. We were invaded by Iraq in 1990. Our meetings stopped. I was captured and taken hostage. But in 1991, after liberation, I returned to Kuwait and we started again. It really does work, but we really do have to work it.
US-Russia exchange bears fruit. By 1989, 3 AA groups are meeting in Russia, 1 in Moscow and 2 in Leningrad. The growth of AA in Russia had begun in 1986–1987, through exchange visits between Alcoholics Anonymous members and representatives of Russia's Temperance Promotion Society. Independent groups such as San Francisco's Creating a Sober World organization were also instrumental in bringing AA to Russia. Growth in Russia proceeds at a rapid pace, expanding to at least 270 groups meeting in more than 100 cities by the beginning of the 21st century.
First Native American Convention in 1991. Living our traditions through sobriety is both the purpose of Native American AA gatherings and the motto on the emblem they create for the first annual convention for Native American AAs from the U.S. and Canada. Among the 800 attendees at the event, held in October 1991 in Las Vegas, are Native Americans from some 100 tribes plus representatives of tribal alcohol programs, halfway houses, and treatment centers. In ensuing years, Washington, South Dakota, North Carolina, and other states will hold their own conventions, leading to the 14th National International Native American Convention, which will convene in Minneapolis in 2004.
1995. Planting a seed in China. In 1995, retired Chinese physician Dr. Lawrence Lewin, who owns a primary health care clinic in Santa Barbara, California, asks the clinic's administrator, who happens to be an AA member, to accompany him on a medical business trip to his hometown of Daiwan. To be granted a visa, the administrator must speak on a health topic, and while Chinese authorities request that he address HIV/AIDS, Dr. Lewin arranges for him to speak to 5 doctors at the mental hospital in Daiwan on his subject of choice, alcoholism. The speech is well received, as are Chinese-language copies of the Big Book he presents to the doctors. In 1998, he will share his experience at the Pacific Regional Forum in Sacramento as a member of the international panel. As a result, a member of the San Francisco Intergroup begins organizing a messengers group that will travel to China. Part of the Great Wall of China is shown in the background.
– 1995. Canada's Golden Anniversary. During the first weekend of July 1995, more than 6,000 AAs and friends from Canada, the US, South America, Europe, and Asia gather in Toronto at the Metro Convention Centre to celebrate 50 years of Alcoholics Anonymous in Canada. The program includes 34 speaker meetings, 26 panels, 40 marathon meetings, and 2 talkathons.
1995. www.aa.org. With approval of the General Service Board, GSO New York launches a site on the World Wide Web on December 22, 1995. With a click, users can now instantaneously access information about the fellowship in English, Spanish, and French. GSO's AA website is constantly evolving. In spring 1998, GSO New York shares the experience of computer-savvy AAs when it issues a list of frequently asked questions for AA entities looking to set up their own website. In 2000, 2006 and 2014, AA.org will undergo major expansions.
2000. Greeting the Millennium in Minneapolis. Some 47,000 people celebrate freedom from the bondage of alcoholism at the 11th International Convention, held in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the summer of 2000. I was one of those lucky people, having traveled down from Canada with 45 others to join in on this memorable occasion. The theme was Pass It On into the 21st Century. One memorable event is Walk the Walk, in which a stream of attendees from 86 nations walks the Blue Line laid down from the Convention Center to the Hubert H. Humphrey Metro Dome on their way to the opening ceremony. The 20 millionth Big Book is presented to Al-Anon family groups in a special ceremony. For me, it was one of the most exhilarating experiences of my life.
Some people might ask if a non-alcoholic person can be elected as chairperson of the General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous. The answer is shown here. In 2001, a woman is elected to chair the General Service Board for the first time. Elaine McDowell, Ph.D., Wright, who had served as a Class A, non-alcoholic, trustee for 9 years, was elected by the members. As chairperson, Dr. McDowell brought more than 28 years of experience in the prevention and treatment fields, as well as abiding faith in AA's basic principles.
2004. Stepping Stones made State Historic Site. Acting on a recommendation from the New York State Board of Historic Preservation, the governor signs a declaration in 2004 making Stepping Stones, the Bedford Hills house Bill and Lois called home beginning in 1941, a New York State Historic Site.
In July 2005, the 25 millionth copy of the Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous, is presented to the warden of San Quentin Prison, at the International Convention in Toronto. The gift of the book is AA's way of expressing gratitude to that institution's long history of supporting AA as a resource for alcoholic inmates. The first AA meeting in San Quentin was held in 1941. 2006, celebrating 60 years. South Africa observes 60 years of AA held in Johannesburg in November. The event is marked with a mini-rally with over 300 people in attendance. A banner at the front of the main stage boldly spells out the theme of the event, From Darkness into Light, AA in SA 1946 to 2006. Among the items on display is a 1947 Big Book owned by Solomon M., who was among the first to help start AA in South Africa. 2009, AA Big Book hits another milestone. The 70th publication anniversary of the Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous, is marked in April 2009. Now in its 4th edition, it is expected that the 30 millionth copy will be published sometime that year. Available in 58 languages, including American Sign Language and Braille, multiple prints and audio formats, AA's basic text has carried the message of hope and recovery around the world. My home group in Kuwait in 2003 was instrumental in the formation of the Middle East Regional Committee. As a General Service Office registered committee of Alcoholics Anonymous, we were eventually able to get the Big Book translated into Arabic. It took us about 7 years to accomplish this. 2009, co-founders honored. Bill and Dr. Bob are inducted into the Extra Mile volunteer pathway founded by the Points of Light Institute. This organization, located in Washington, D.C., honors individuals who pioneered volunteer movements and who serve as positive role models. I post a picture of the plaque which was sent to me by a guy the first used to sponsor. He was in recovery just 3 weeks when he had to visit Washington on a business trip. He was amazed when he stumbled across this plaque embedded in the pavement. He sent it to me by email. I never knew of this before then.
2015. AA's 80th birthday celebrated in Atlanta, Georgia, July 2–5. Over 57,000 AA members and guests from 94 countries around the world celebrated AA's 80th birthday in Atlanta, Georgia, with the theme, 80 years, happy, joyous and free. Nearly 250 scheduled meetings were held in various languages. At the Sunday morning meeting, the 35 millionth copy of the Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous, was presented to the Sisters of Charity of St. Augustine, the religious order of Sister Ignatia, who worked closely with Dr. Bob to sober up thousands of alcoholics at St. Thomas Hospital in Akron, Ohio.
The author of this presentation would like to thank the following entities who have helped me to source some of the materials for this presentation: www.aa.org, www.alcoholicsanonymous.org.uk, www.jft333.org. Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age. Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. Pass It On. Grapevine Magazine. Share Magazine. Roundabout Magazine. In addition, I thank those who have reached out to my request when I began this project to provide other information. It is hoped that you have enjoyed this presentation as much as I have enjoyed producing it. Thanks very much.